Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Euractiv online debate supported by IPA Europe. Probiotics in Europe. How can better regulation strengthen the knowledge of probiotics for consumer health? As always, first things first, if you want to get involved with our discussion, send in your comments and your questions into our Slido chat page. You can also scan the QR code. And if you are going to use any hashtags to tweet about us on social media, use the hashtag probiotics, of course. Okay, so probiotics, what are they then? Well, essentially they're what we like to call good bacteria or live microorganisms that are believed to help maintain or restore good gut health and boost our immunity. Now, when our guts become unbalanced with bad or harmful bacteria, that imbalance can cause health problems, particularly the kind of health problems that no one really wants to talk about, the gastrointestinal issues. Right, so probiotics can be found in foods as well, such as yogurts, kefir, and if you're like me and you do love things like pickled onions and gherkins, hey, don't be judgy, because guess what? Fermented vegetables are a great source of probiotics. They can also be taken as a supplement, and this is where the crux of the problem lies. In the UK, in the US, and of course here in the EU, probiotics are classed as supplements and not as drugs. So as food rather than as medicine, they don't then go through the same sort of rigorous testing. For the consumer, it can mean that they possibly can't be sure that the product that they're buying contains the bacteria that it claims to have, and if that bacteria that they claim to have in it can survive the journey to our guts and give us that health boost that we've been searching for. Another EU caveat is that supplements claiming to be probiotics can't be sold in the EU, as use of the term probiotic is considered to be an unauthorized health claim and was banned since 2007. According to the Commission, the term could be misleading to consumers unless it can be scientifically substantiated. But with the overall market of probiotic food, so your yogurts, your dairy-based drinks, your food supplements and sour milk being valued at a staggering 9.5 billion euros, does that give regulators 9.5 billion reasons to regulate this market better? Especially if they want to protect the consumer and, of course, help us all have healthy guts. Well, let's ask our experts then. Joining us this afternoon for this panel on probiotics, we have Lasse Hamilton Heidelman. He's member of Fit for Future platform and member of the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to you. We have Denai Spensu, who is the accredited parliamentary assistant to MEP Stelios Kimpopoulos at the European Parliament. Sadly, the MEP couldn't attend, and I apologise if I did mispronounce the name there as well. Next, we also have Naomi Venlet. She's a scientific project manager at ILSI Europe, the International Life Sciences Institute Europe. And then finally, we have Esteban Lauland, who's the chair of the International Probiotic Association Europe, IPA. Okay, well, welcome to all of you. And I think lots of people will be looking very much forward to discussing probiotics and listening to our debate. So without further ado, let me now hand it over to all of you to introduce yourselves. And let's start with Lasse first.
Yes, so my name is Lasse Hamilton Heidelman. I'm in fact from the Danish Chamber of Commerce, but nonetheless, I'm a Senior Director for EU and International Affairs. I'm also a member of the Fit for the Future platform, which is my reason to be here today. I am unfortunately not an expert in probiotics, but I have worked quite extensively with the Fit for the Future platform in terms of giving an opinion on biosolutions. And this is basically why we're here, or I am here today. The Fit for the Future platform is an advisory organ to the Commission, and it's headed by Maros Šefčovič. And we have worked over the last year, so all of 2023, to get to a number of opinions, which is recommendations basically from the platform, on how we can improve the use of biosolutions in Europe. Now, the platform consists of 20 experts, so appointed experts. Then there's the Economic and Social Committee, the Commission regions, and then all the 27 member states. So it's quite a group of people who have to agree on something. So when things are actually agreed there, it is rather a powerful way forward and a clear recommendation to the Commission. In the report, which I would advise everyone to go have a look at the website, there is a suggestion, it's number 8, which deals directly with the use of probiotics. And we have started out with quite a, let's say, a fresher text, but now have come to the compromise with all the interests that were involved. It basically says that there should be a dialogue around how probiotics is used in the member states, because we see a fragmentation of how it's used in the different member states, and it serves neither the businesses nor the consumers to have unclear information about what is actually in their products. And the current situation is that in some places probiotics can de facto be used as a phrase. In other member states it cannot. And even though your doctor or your pharmacist may use the phrase probiotics, that is not actually what it says on the package when you get it. So we are trying to push forward a broader debate on how these words can be used so that we can get a harmonized system in place that doesn't hurt businesses and at the same time enlightens the consumer in the way that it is supposed to. So I think that was it for my starting statement.
Okay, perfect. So harmonised rules and a better dialogue on probiotics. Perfect. Just an important caveat for everyone who is, of course, watching. We would have been delighted to have a European Commission spokesperson on the panel today, but unfortunately they weren't available, but we have all of our lovely panelists, as you can see. Next over to Denai.
Yes, thank you, Mariam. I'm speaking here on behalf of my MEP. He was he really wanted to be here, but unfortunately due to health reasons, he couldn't make it. He's a doctor and his PhD actually researches on probiotics. And so he gave me all the inside information on that. In accordance with what he believes and to my personal view also, probiotics can have a very beneficial effect when consumed. Mariam, you mentioned some of these, and of course there are some other recent developments that they saw they can have even related connections to the mood and the mental health. So there is a new category of phycobiotics that they are very important for the disorders, and they can involve psychological comorbidities associated with alteration to the gut microbiome. I have more a legal and policy background, and I'm representing my MP as an advisor in the SANT Committee of the European Parliament, the very recently established Committee on Public Health, and the ENVI Committee, Environment, Food, Health and Food Safety. This is a very important time that we are discussing this with all the latest developments on the EU legislation on the European health data space. So health seems to be in the center of the EU legislation at the moment, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing this further and the potentials for the regulation of the use of the word probiotics.
Okay, thank you so much. Over to Naomi.
Yes, thank you, Miriam. Thanks for the introduction, and it's great to be here at the panel today. Maybe I'll just start briefly with introducing ILSE Europe. I'm not sure if everyone is already familiar with what we do. So at ILSE Europe, we provide science-based guidance to the food sector and build consensus between industry, academia, and public authorities. And why do we do that? We do this to advance in the field in food safety, nutrition, and sustainability. And like I said, very happy to be here because probiotics have been a very interesting topic that's been under the debate at ILSE Europe as well. And this is why we've actually started or set up the Probiotic Task Force. And together with the Prebiotics Task Force, because we also have that at ILSE Europe, they joined forces and they've developed a document which is called the Concise Monograph. And it's a short blue booklet, let's call it like that. Where they bundled the scientific information on pre and probiotics. And just for the aim of today, I'll focus only on the probiotics part of it. So together with experts from academia and industry, they've bundled the scientific information and presented it in such a way that it's objective and accessible to non-experts. So this includes consumers, but also non-experts in industry, academia, or in the public sector. So anyone who's interested in learning more about probiotics. And to even make it more accessible, we've actually translated it into 6 different languages. And we believe that this monograph is so important because in an era where we are confronted with so many different types of information, the monograph, as I said, aims at informing a very wide audience on the probiotic concepts and their related health benefits. And what is in the concise monograph? So it covers the concept on probiotics, the related health benefits. Now with the updated version, because we actually launched the first monograph in 2013 and we've updated it last year, we've included new science around emerging health topics such as the gut-brain axis or mental health, and included advances in technologies. And at ILSI, we believe that this monograph will improve scientific credibility in the pre and probiotic fields. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Naomi. And then over to our final panelist, Espen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miriam, and thank you for this opportunity also to introduce, you could say, IPA Europe. But before I do that, just a few words of myself. So I'm the president of IPA Europe, and when I'm not, you could say, president of IPA Europe, I'm employed by Christian Hansen, which is a leading bioscience ingredients company, and a major producer and supplier of probiotic cultures for the world market. But back to IPA Europe. So we are the European chapter of the International Probiotic Association, which were created in Brussels in 2015. And the member companies are directly engaged in Europe in the manufacture of probiotic cultures or probiotic foods, supplements, or nutritional or therapeutic products. So IPA Europe represents the interest of the European probiotic industry in all discussions with the European institutions, national governments, relevant trade associations, and leading scientists at European and international level. We are part of the Global International Probiotic Association. So you would say when we take the whole global view, we are about 120 companies in representing 29 countries. So IPA Europe is active in establishing or in the discussion on probiotic standards and voluntary guidelines to define the conditions for the use of the term probiotic and promote responsible production and marketing of these products. And we work together with other organizations like, for instance, the ISAP, the International Scientific Association for Probiotics and Prebiotics. And we developed back in 2018 some conditions for the use of the word probiotic microorganisms to ensure quality products on the market, and also to enlighten and inform the consumer. And Miriam, you already mentioned in your introduction that there is a market about 9.5 billion euro in Europe of these products, and the majority of these probiotic products of these 9.5 billion euro are actually in the food category. So in dairy products like yogurts and others, where the probiotic cultures are also part of. So it is an important discussion that we are having today. How can we actually make sure that we also inform the European customers in the right way?
So much. And Espen, I'll come to you first then with my first question. You know, if we're talking about the European consumer, are probiotic supplements then a fad? You know, what real strategy do they, or what do they provide really when helping to, you know, promote good health, especially to ensure that we have this healthy gut and liver? Talk us through them. Are they a fad?
I don't believe so.
No, of course.
Because I mean, there's a long history about, you know, using microbes, or that we have to have microbial cultures in order to sustain our microflora. The whole, you could say, new research field of the human microbiome is really booming these years. So there are a lot of, you could say, research which have been going on around probiotics and how they can impact the healthy well-being of humans. And that has been going on for the past few decades. I think today, if you go into PubMed, which is a public scientific international library, and where you can see actually the number of, you could say, research articles within the field. I think there's close to 6,000, you could say, articles focusing on probiotics and related field in 2020. And if you look at it from the previous year, that's actually also an increase about almost 10% in the number of publications. So there's a lot of interest in the scientific field about how probiotics can impact the human health and well-being. And it's also very important to stress that the EU Research Foundation, or the funding through the EU Horizon programs, are actually funding a lot of the studies within the probiotic field. So I don't feel that probiotics is a fad. They're really a big scientific background behind that, and we just need to make sure that these studies also come to the benefit of the European consumers.
Okay, thank you so much. Naomi, then, sticking with the kind of science around probiotics then, talk us through, what's really going on in our bodies that probiotics can help, so people can really understand it.
Yes, so thanks, Miriam. So when probiotics are consumed, it can have very different effects, and that also depends on the type of probiotic you take. So what is important when taking probiotics is actually to take into account two different things. So first is the type of probiotics, as I mentioned. So you have the genus, the species, and the strain level. And without the strain level, you can actually not have the right information to what health benefit you're actually looking for. So it is important to always look at that. Another thing is the amount of a probiotics also plays a big role on what exactly the health benefits is going to confer. So it should have the probiotic should contain the right amount, the right levels to confer the health benefit that you're looking towards. So in terms of what then happens to your body is when you digest or you take if you take a probiotic, it interacts with your gut microbiome, and this again can produce metabolites, which then again can have a beneficial role on the target host, so on human health.
Okay, and so does anyone on the panel then take any sort of probiotic supplements or food itself, things like yogurt, etc., or someone also likes pickled onions like I do? Denai, I think you mentioned earlier that you're a fan of taking a supplement.
Yes, that's correct. I'm currently taking some supplements because I was doing an antibiotic, and usually they recommend and it's better to take it. But I'm also coming from Greece, and I very much enjoy having yogurt with probiotics. It's not whether it is mentioned or not, but it's always good for the health, and I very much enjoy all the vegetables that can provide it. So I find it very beneficial to include it in your health, but it's important what Naomi mentioned before, that there are different types and quantities. So each one of us should have the necessary guidance and information on what is best for our health and our immune system. So we have different needs, and we need then different types of probiotics, and it's the same with vitamins and every other supplement that we might take. We take it for a specific reason, so it's good that we take it only when it's absolutely necessary and we know what exactly we need.
Now, lots of people, of course, take all kinds of supplements, but specifically, with probiotics, there's, as we were, this debate is all about. There's such an issue with using the word probiotic, and there's an issue with the regulation as a whole. But for example, the World Health Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization, they describe probiotics as live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit on the host. So why then is it possible to say that the EU perhaps hasn't caught up on the science surrounding probiotics. What really is the problem with it? Danai, back to you again for the same question.
Yes, thank you. It seems it is true that most of the times we lag behind the third countries like US or UK, other countries, on these scientific advancements. And this has not only been the case in probiotics, but also in other types of clinical trials and scientific evidence. And the thing is that we don't lack research or innovation. It's that sometimes we do have a lot of bureaucracy, and this is part of our job. We try to make everything be legal and ethical and follow the right procedure. And sometimes we put some extra burden on ourselves. And this is what might hold your back is not necessarily bad or wrong, because then it means that what we do will stay safe, and the regulation we will eventually have will provide for the use of the term probiotics when it's related to, as now it is only related to per se health claims. And it could be also in other situations, but this innovation in this late advance and opportunity for the platform, for the future platform, could help maybe reduce this burden and simplify the situation in the EU, how it can work. But in my opinion, it's also important not to have also a regulation or a labeling, but to provide a broader health literacy through public hearings, raising awareness. This is also very important.
Okay, and also, for our viewers who are following along this debate, let us know in Slido if, for example, you are taking probiotics, and of course you have any questions for our panelists. Leslie, coming to you then. If probiotics, are labelled as health claims, why hasn't, the science surrounding probiotics for you moved on in the EU?
Well, that is actually a really good question. I mean, when we did the report, we looked across all the member states to see what actually happened, how the phrases were used, and how the terms were allowed in some jurisdictions and not in others. And it turns out that there's actually pretty broad fragmentation. So if there were just one answer, then I guess, and the legislation was sufficiently clear, then we would in fact have one way of doing it. So the angle that we've come at it for, not being specialist in probiotics, is basically an internal market angle. So we want the internal market to function. We don't want there to be fragmentation internally, and we want the claims to be credible and uniform across, so that everyone knows what we're dealing with. We create a level playing field for the businesses, and the consumers can be sure that what they are told is in fact correct. And right now it appears to be all over the place. As far as I've known, and what says in the report is that there's 3 countries or 6 in practice that allows it for non-specific health claims. There's 7 countries who sort of ban it more or less outright, and it creates a strange fragmentation for which there appear to be no good reason other than the legislation is unclear and the member states are running in different directions in terms of their interpretation.
So given all of this fragmentation then, Espen, if the needle isn't moving on regulating them, even though perhaps the conversation is and there's a consumer interest in them, why have this conversation today then? What's changed? What innovation is out there? Talk to us through it.
Yeah, well, I think, you have to go back to the regulation 1924 from 2006 on nutrition and health claim, and especially also the guidance that they put forward in 2007, which mentioned contain probiotic as an example of a health claim. So, this is a 16-year-old, you could say, regulation, and even a guidance that is 16 years old. So things have moved in the world that we're living today, and especially if you look outside Europe. I'll come back to Europe afterwards, but if you look outside Europe, in Canada, Argentina, Brazil, India, Canada, I mentioned already, they have defined rules to clarify the probiotic category. So to give the possibility to EU companies to play at a level playing field, as mentioned by Lasse, in EU and outside. I mean, we have to, make sure that we have the same modus operandi. That has also had the consequence, as also mentioned by Lasse before, that the term has been accepted and used in certain member states. We have, since 2013, that there are Italian guidelines, there are new guidelines in Spain. There are some countries that have opened up for supplements, but not for foods, like in Denmark and other countries and so on. So, it is a very fragmented market that we are looking into, and of course, as an industry, as a reliable and trustworthy industry, we want to make sure that we are doing things right, and that we, you could say, have a uniform regulatory environment. And looking also another aspect in this context is actually that if we make a survey of European consumers, that they are, and we did one in 2022 with among 8,000 consumers in 8 different European countries, that a lot of the you could say the response we got was that almost 60% of those who surveyed found that they couldn't see anything on that a product contained probiotics, and that almost 80% of the respondents would like to be informed whether a product contains probiotics through a food label. So you could say that the word probiotic is in the public domain, and we need to make sure that this is something that we can use. Basically, you cannot put that. Also, you could say the genie is out of the box or out of the bottle, and you cannot put the genie back in the bottle. So probiotics, whether we like it or not, is in the public domain, and I think we, as a trustworthy industry, we need to make sure that we have, you could say, a clear guidance for how to act in this field.
Okay, so Espen, coming to you then. So talked there about harmonised rules and certainty for the consumers as well, and of course certainty for the industry. But if we look at it, if we look at the market itself, IPA data says the European probiotic supplement market was valued at almost 1.5 billion euros in 2021, close to 25% of the global value, with a forecasted growth rate of 3% for 2021 to 2026. So if we look at that, not having the word probiotic specifically on a packaging of a supplement doesn't really harm the sales of the probiotic itself. So it hasn't put the consumer off. So if the consumer isn't put off, then what's the problem?
Yeah, but you could say that, the European producers cannot use the, you could say, the word, and that they can only use it for certain markets and so on. But on the internet, the consumers can find, you could say, products containing or with a label probiotics, and then import it directly. So you could say you give it a disadvantage to the European producers of probiotic cultures, both for the supplement and of course also for the food industry. But when we're talking about supplements, so basically you can import it from outside Europe. And there are, you could say, the European producers cannot compete on the same level.
So let me just follow up with your question there. Why do you think that probiotics are a field that are so badly regulated in the sense that we're selling probiotics in the market, but we can't use the word probiotic? What is the problem here? What's the crux of it for you?
Well, I think, if I've to be very frank, I think the European Commission are, looking at something which were established 16 years ago, and that they seem to be stuck in, you could say, in a way of a circular arguments. So they don't take into the consideration the new, you could say, conditions that we are, an environment that we are living in today. So that I think is you could say a problem for at least for the probiotic industry, and also for the consumers, because they know that it exists and they are asking for it.
But do you, Naomi, let me ask you this. Do you think that the consumer actually understands that there is such a problem regarding the sort of regulation of probiotics?
That's a good question, Miriam. I am not sure if the consumer understands the complexity of it, but I think the consumer does not understand fully, or does not have the right information to make informed decisions at this moment, because it is so fragmented and there is no harmonized approach. So I think in that sense, as we did with the concise monograph at ILSA Europe, providing bundling together the scientific information at the moment, including new developments and emerging health topics on probiotics, and providing it in such a way that it's accessible to everyone and easy to understand, could help for consumers to make an informed decision when reaching out to probiotics or not, taking them or not.
Denai, obviously, as the representative of the MEP, so the representative of the people here, and obviously we don't have someone from the European Commission joining us. So, as the representative of the European Parliament, why do you think the European Commission is holding back here?
Yes, this is a good question, but hard to answer, I guess. Maybe there would be giving authorization to a product to use the term probiotic would be beneficial for the consumers to make them choose the right product and avoid unhealthy and unnecessary choices. But I guess the main reason that the European Commission is holding back on this and it's not moving on authorizing, the EFA does not given yet any authorization on the any product to be considered as probiotic if it's not really related with a health claim, is maybe because they lack, as we mentioned before, the scientific, specific scientific proof that using that term is important for the consumer, or using that term is actually accredited and certified scientifically that this product would really help and provide these health issues, because it's different when we get from the pharmacy probiotics and we use them for a specific reason, for a gut disorder or for antibiotics, and it's different when you say that the part of these is included in some cereal bars or other products. Sometimes it might be misleading, so maybe the whole issue and the stallment in regulating these is just to make sure that we do this safely and we don't create any confusion. On another level, it could be also work together with the Circular Economy Action Plan that the Commission has proposed earlier this year, and the QR code that we will put now on the products, so that you can know the whole supply chain and all the information and ingredients of the product there. So this could also be helpful for the consumers.
Indeed, and obviously, what is helpful is perhaps also the regulation. Espen, as the kind of industry perspective, on our panel, when the EU is sometimes accused of over-regulating, is it quite stark that they're under-regulating here, or not moving along with the times or the science that is coming out?
Well, first of all, I mean, it is so that the food business operators are responsible for the products they put on the market. So of course it has to be, reliable things that we put on the market. So I think it's in our own interest, to have clear and harmonized rule at all stages of the production, including labeling and communication to consumers. And we have, of course, also another, you could say, regulation in the EU, this food information to consumers, which states that it is, very well, it's mandatory to provide clear and understandable information to the consumer about food, about the food on labels and other communication. And I don't think that is, we're not in that position today to really inform the consumers about, you would say, that these products contain probiotics. And in this context, but it's also in this context that if you look on other, you would say, categories like fibers and so on, and vitamins and so on, you are able to put that as a general denomination on products that they contain fibers and so on. And we just find it difficult, that why there's this distinction between those categories.
Okay, so could we also say perhaps that, the European Commission is perhaps looking at this as, even though health is an EU competence, they believe that it's a derogation for member states to sort out their own rules? And I'll give that to Lasse.
Well, that appears to be the outcome, at least. I'm not sure that was the original intention. When we spoke to the Commission during the development of the opinion, it was their sort of starting statement, at least, that the rules were clear and there was no legislative reason for the fragmentation, which is a bit of an interesting argument since every member state appears to be doing it differently. So yes, I think to some extent the sort of lack of clarity in the rules has at least resulted in fragmentation, but that might be a good reason for the Commission to then pick it up and create some more harmonized way forward for this. And also, just as an aside, there is a general rule in terms of consumer information that is given, that is the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive's Article 5, that says you cannot mislead the consumers. So it is, as a general rule and always in any field, illegal to mislead the consumers knowingly.
Indeed. And I think earlier you were bringing up the example of Spain. I was actually looking at Italy, let's say, and their market, it's the third largest market actually in the world, with over 560 million euros of sales of probiotic supplements in 2021, and their forecasted growth is 5% up until the period 2026. And then you compare it to a non-EU member state, the United Kingdom. Their market is only 50.6 million euros. So what happens then when you don't have harmonized rules? Because I know that you're bringing up specific countrywide examples, but what happens when you have a big market like Italy having its own rules versus another country? I mean, this is the example I have, obviously, as a non-EU member state, but I've used it for the purposes of to show that it's a smaller market. What happens when you then have these major discrepancies?
Well, the challenge is, as with anything internally in the internal market, if you have to relabel, if you have to change your product, then it's cost, and it hinders the spread of what should be one big integrated market. If you have something in one member state, it should, as a concept, be legal in the next member state. Otherwise, we get fragmentation, and there is, in fact, no real internal market. So it's just practical cost and lack of accessibility for these products in member states when the fragmentation happens, because you'd have to relabel or you'd have to redo your product to make sure that you can sell it somewhere else. In principle, the mutual recognition would apply, but it's not used in this field, at least not effectively.
And so, Espen, following up that sort of question with you as well, what discrepancies or problems have you seen cross borders or in various member states?
Well, I think it is just related to what Lasse just mentioned, that I mean, it increases the cost of you would say the producers of these products, and it's also against, you could say, the whole idea about the common market, the single market we have in EU, that we are not, you know, in a position to have the same, you could say, regulatory framework in the different countries. So,
Yeah.
so I agree to what Lasse was saying just before. Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, we don't have anyone from the Commission on our panel. So in lieu of them being here, what advice do you guys as panelists have for the European Commission in trying to regulate probiotics? What should be part of their framework? And I'll go around the panel. So Lasse, starting with you first.
All right. So the recommendation that we came out, which is, as I said, the suggestion 8, is to start a debate about how probiotics is used and to create a harmonized way forward, so that we agree how things should be done, and then we do it in the same way, so we can get the integration in the internal market that everyone wants. It'll be better for the consumers. It will create a level playing field amongst the businesses. I'm sure that the safety and security and the trustworthiness of the information would also improve. So we see that as a way forward, and that is in fact what the recommendation says.
Okay, Danai, your thoughts for the European Commission?
Yes, I would agree with Lasse, and I would also add that it would be quite beneficial to see the best practices and that they're being used now in the member states, and to see what could be most applicable to the majority of the consumers, and then maybe even suggest some guidelines before moving on a specific regulation.
Naomi?
Agreeing with Lasse and Dania, of course, but maybe also looking from a more scientific perspective, is taking also into account the vast amount of scientific evidence there is. I think it was Espen who mentioned it, that only last year more than 5,000 new publications came up in 1 year on probiotics. And then again, as I mentioned, what is important when setting up such a regulatory framework around probiotics is looking at the type of probiotics, because not every type has the same health benefits. And then again, the amounts. And then with the amounts, there should also be a guarantee that it can contain this amount for the end of shelf life of the probiotic product.
Yeah, and if I should also come with some recommendation for the Commission, is that, I mean, based on, you could say, that the foundation of their position is still, 16 years old. I mean, they have to revise the position, and that's what I would very much urge them to consider, and especially in the light that, the word probiotics is in the public domain and consumers recognize it. So we need to come up with some reliable, uniform definitions in Europe, because that's what the consumers are looking for. IPA Europe have proposed, together with ISAP, as I mentioned in my introductory statement, some guidance for that. This is not just unreliable definitions of probiotics, but some very concrete, you would say, definitions of when is a strain probiotic and so on. So I would very much urge the Commission to, reconsider their position and change, you would say, the current position they have.
Okay, we know that Danai has to leave, so I'll ask you one last question before you have to leave us, and any sort of final thoughts you want to add on the back of that as well. But, if we're talking about the European Commission, not budging, not wanting to regulate the area of probiotics, what can MEPs then do at a political level, especially considering, there are EU elections coming up very soon?
Yes, thank you for this question, and I'm sorry we'll have to leave soon. So for sure the MEPs could raise awareness and speak as much as possible, and then put pressure on the Commission to find a solution. It's very important now that we have this very new established Committee on Public Health, SANT. So it could also be possibly proposed to have a public hearing next on the use of probiotics, and specifically if a new regulation would be appropriate. And based on that, and on the following mandate, there could be more actions specifically, and let's see what else could be on that. Thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today.
No, thank you so much, and appreciate that you stepped in for your MEP as well. That was very nice of you. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day. Okay, so panelists, just picking up on what Danai was saying there, she's talking there, possibility of having public hearings for probiotics. The European Parliament could definitely do a lot more. Who wants to take that question? Perhaps Leslie.
Yes, I mean, as a basic rule, it's the Commission who has to propose changes of the rules, but the Parliament can obviously push through agendas and do own initiatives reports, questions for the Commission, and so on. So that would be very attractive if the Parliament would take an interest in this and try and push the issue forward. We need to have that dialogue so we can get to a better place, and anything that the Parliament can do to try and push that forward would be interesting. And then we have an election in 24, and there will be approval of new commissioners, so the parliamentarians can ask them there as well.
Exactly, but why do you think, just to follow up with you there, why do you think, we've talked about the European Commission, we've talked about, what the European Parliament can do. Why is it that, the European Parliament, they're the voice or the spokesperson of the people, and obviously health is such an important issue for everyone. Why do you think they're not acutely aware or trying to push this forward, to try to get better sort of regulation or legislation so, the people that they're representing are better protected or better informed?
There appears to be some sensitivity in the system as well. We are not... there is, amongst especially the consumer associations and so on, quite some apprehension against using probiotics. This came out clearly as well as we were negotiating the opinion. The starting point was that they wanted it removed entirely. So we had a good exchange with them, and we found a reasonable compromise. But there's quite a lot of sensitivity in the system as well. And I think that is also reflected in Parliament, that they feel a bit unsure. They feel it might be misleading to consumers. They expect different health benefits than the ones that are on offer, or it is considered sort of more of a health claim than a general claim. So I think there's some sensitivity in the system that we need to have a dialogue around to be able to move forward.
And Naomi, your thoughts then on increasing the dialogue, especially, from the people's representative?
Maybe picking up on what Lasse just finally mentioned. Also the question if probiotics, if I understand correctly, is it a fad then, or is it not agreed upon all organizations that probiotics are working or are safe? Maybe to catch up on that is that probiotics are, such as any other dietary intervention, there's many factors that determine if they work or not. So that can be the individual diet of every person. That can be your own gut microbiota composition. It can be medication. So it's a very complex discussion, which doesn't make it easy. But then again, if this one, because there's so many probiotics, so if one is not working, it means that maybe another one might for you. And then if looking again at the scientific evidence, for the general public, for most of the people, it is considered safe. Although, of course, with some groups of the population, such as elderly infants or people with serious diseases or immune disorders, they should first consult their doctor when taking probiotics.
So just to follow up with you there, Naomi, you've spoken about different types of probiotics for different kinds of health problems, some, obviously lesser health issues. someone just perhaps trying to have, good gut health versus someone who might have a more serious health issue. Beyond this sort of regulatory, conundrum that probiotics finds itself in, what sort of information or studies can, associations like yourself do to help people understand? What information can you put out there for people to understand better the type of probiotic they perhaps could be using for themselves and to, help regulate their health better?
Yeah. So I'm happy you asked that question, Mariam, and I'd like to link it again back to our monograph. I think that's one of our most valuable pieces because it does not only address the scientific community, but it's written in such a way again that it addresses consumers. But I think more importantly, not only consumers, also non-experts from the fields, from industry, from academia, and then maybe people from the commissions or public authorities. So apart from that, at ILSE Europe, once we have, so within the task force, we have, of course, other activities ongoing on investigating the effects of probiotics linked to specific health benefits. We always try to develop maybe a more accessible document summarizing the work to ensure that the information is passed on in an accessible way again to a broader audience.
Indeed, and Espen, as the chair, the president of the Probiotics Association Europe, what advice can you give then to consumers when they're looking at the range of probiotics and trying to understand, whether I think it's 3,000 or 6,000 or 8,000 microorganisms that are in these pills that they potentially could take? What should they be looking out for or trying to achieve by taking a supplement?
Well, I would like just to piggyback on a little what Naomi said. First of all, there are a lot of different, you could say, areas that probiotics or can remedy vis-a-vis the health and well-being of individual persons and so on. So, of course, it's very good that we have a broad spectrum of different products on the market with different target say functions and so on. But I would also like to stress that the whole probiotic industry are working very closely together with universities, research institutions, also organizations like ILSE and ISEP, as I've mentioned before, to make sure that you could say the studies that are presented by reliable probiotic producers are, you could say, trustworthy and that also can, sustain in the products that we are presenting to the market. Of course, the broad spectrum of different microorganisms and strains, will then have to fit, you could say, to the condition that a particular person would like to take. So I'm very pleased that we have this broad, you could say, range of products within this category.
But are there specific terminology used, obviously in the labeling of these products, Espen, that the consumer can look out for? I don't want to try to pronounce those. I'm sure you can do it much better than I can.
But you have to think if there are specific things and you want to have a real health claim. You have to get it through EFSA, which we fully recognize is the way to move forward. And of course that requires studies also according to the this nutrition and health claim about we have to test it in a general healthy population, and it has to be done according to the highest scientific standard. And I think that's also what we are all, you could say, reliable probiotic producers are trying to do. So I hope that answered your question. Maybe.
Indeed, and Lasse, coming back to you then. There's so much, we've spoken about obviously the producers and for them wanting to have, rules and for their industry to be regulated. Is regulation also the only way to kind of kick out the kind of cowboy manufacturers or producers who perhaps aren't trustworthy? Because that's also a massive issue for anyone trying to, take a supplement of a probiotic. Sometimes, that understanding might be missing, or, bad claims might be out there. Is that an issue?
I think it is. I think it is. And as with everything else, the problem is that rogue traders can have, in some cases, if the rules are unclear, free reign to do things, or they don't simply don't follow the rules and just do it anyways, to the disadvantage and the unleavened playing field for the businesses who are actually trying their best to uphold the law and follow the rules to the best of their ability. So it's bad for the reputable businesses who are trying to do what they can to uphold the rules, and it's bad for the consumers who end up with products that are maybe inefficient or maybe even worse. So it seems like a bad situation overall. The problem with rogue traders is obviously they're quite hard to get at because they are rogue, so they will claim whatever they want. So there needs to be some real enforcement to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Indeed, and it's quite interesting. The EU as a whole is takes labeling very seriously, but it seems in this area a little bit less so, which is quite ironic. Naomi, you've mentioned your scientific monograph a few times. How could data help to perhaps create a scientifically accepted definition of probiotics that is accepted by regulators, industry, and then also understood by consumers? Because I think data is something we haven't, touched upon just quite yet.
So, I'm sorry, Miriam, just to clarify, you mean the scientific data that's already here?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay. Well, I know that in 2001, it was I think it was WHO and FAO that first formulated a definition on probiotics, and this was updated by ISEP a few years after that. So from a scientific perspective, I think that there is already quite a clear consensus on what exactly a probiotic is. So live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, can confer a health benefit on humans. So in that sense, I think this is already a nice guideline also for regulators to as a starting point for a definition
Okay. Well, let's come to some audience questions then. We have a question from Dr. Luma, who says, do we expect to use a probiotic treatment as drugs for the near future? Perhaps, Naomi, you could take that one. So could probiotics be seen as a drug for the future rather than a food supplement?
That's an interesting question. I think there's two sides of it, because probiotics can be taken for two different reasons. On one hand, you can take it to more support your health, so it can more have a supportive function. Let's say you're going on a trip and you know that your dietary habits will change, so you know that this will affect your bowel movements, and you want to sustain your normal bodily functions. So in that sense, it has more of a supportive role, and maybe not necessarily seen as a drug, and is more part of a balanced diet. At the other hand, there is a lot of scientific evidence also showing that probiotics can have an impact on a lot of diseases. So this can go from the effect on irritable bowel syndrome, but also looking at more emerging topics such as the gut-brain axis and the link to mental health. So in that sense, I think there might be opportunities.
Indeed. You brought up IBS. So for someone that perhaps has IBS, I know some people might not want to admit to having, these kind of issues. There's some, but is a probiotic then a good investment for their health?
Yeah, so I am not the expert in IBS, and I'm sure our experts at ILSA Europe, the ones that we're working on with from industry and academia, will be happy to take that question in more detail. But I know that at least with one of our activities right now, there's an expert group looking into the effect on IBS, but also many other gastric GI infections and diseases. So no, I'm happy to take on that question maybe when with the experts as well.
Indeed. Espen, I'll give this question from Marilia for you. They say, following the WHO definition does indicate host and not consumer or patient. For the panelists, would it be limiting at an EU level to move forward directly at food supplements and not beyond as ingredients like enzymes and application in other categories? Do you understand the question, first of all? Please do answer it if you can.
Well, I mean, does it also encompass that, I mean, we should, besides probiotic, also take enzymes and other ingredients into the probiotics sphere? Is that how it was understood?
I think that's what they're trying to ask. Moving forward,
Yeah, but I think, I mean, I think we should make sure that we preserve the word probiotics for you know, live microorganisms and so on, and I think that's very important, because otherwise you will have probiotic cleaning, you will have probiotic you could say carpets and so on. So probiotics in our definition should be preserved to live microorganisms.
Okay, next question. Espen, perhaps we'll come to you for this one. It says, just coming back to the question, they've asked it again. What does the EC need? Guidance does exist. IPA has published clear guidance. Also, Codex is working on this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, I mean, first of all, I mean, they have to recognize, the EU Commission, that there are movements. I mean, things have changed since they came up with the first, you could say, the guidance, or the health and nutrition guidance regulation back in 2006, and the guidance in 2007. So things have changed, and I think they have to look at where we are today with an opening that we need to have a opening for use of the word probiotics in the same manner as we have for fibers and vitamins and so on in the European regulatory environment.
Okay, Silviana, this will go to Lasse. Silviana says, first of all, thanks for inviting her to attend this conference. Well, thanks for being with us. She says, for a better understanding, I would like to know if the prebiotic will also be considered in proposals of EU regulations. I mean, that's something that we perhaps haven't discussed, prebiotics. What's the difference between perhaps a prebiotic and a probiotic?
Well, I don't know if you, Naomi, but otherwise I can say that the probiotics is, of course, the living bacteria and so on, whereas you could say the prebiotics is some of the nutrients that the probiotic bacteria, lives on. So basically, you could take prebiotics, and then that would enhance, you could say, the growth of probiotics in your gut.
Okay, great. And then a final question, perhaps Naomi, you can take this. Marilla also asked another question. How can the industry, perhaps this isn't, but anyway, how can the industry better align or bring best practice to the European Commission apart from MEP pressure? What else could be brought?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer that question. Maybe Lasse, if you're...
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
Sure. Yes, I mean, we've tried, actually. What is in the Fit for the Future platform is sort of the first step to try and open up the conversation. And that stands as a recommendation for all the Commission services, in principle, in perpetuity. So that would be one way forward. But if we could have a broader debate, so the Parliament will do their bit, the Commission will do their bit, and the Member States might also have a role here. There are businesses throughout the Member States who would have an interest in this, so maybe we can engage Council as well. So the more stakeholders we can engage here, the more interesting it would be. But it stands, it remains that the Commission puts forth new legislation. So the Commission is, in fact, the interlocutor that would have to be convinced.
Indeed it does. So a final question to all the panelists then. Can you see in the near future a time when the word probiotic can be used on the labelling of food supplements? And obviously we said the European Commission is the one who needs to push the needle, but how long do you think perhaps it's going to take? Let's say to you first.
Well, I'll take the optimistic view and say just on the other hand, on the other side of this commission period, then we can start. So we can start the process in 2025 and then implementation in 27.
Optimistic. What about you, Naomi?
Well, I would like to join Lasse with that optimistic view. I think at least the scientific evidence is there, and we see R&D is moving forward, and R&D is moving forward because there is such a huge consumer interest as well. So the market is asking for it. So I think I'll join that positive outlook.
Okay, Espen, do you also have the positive outlook?
If it's very optimistic and so on, but I think realistic that I agree with you, Lasse. I think we will have to, unfortunately, see it come through in the next, commission period. I don't think that we will see it. Unfortunate before we have a change in the commission. Unfortunate, because I think, as you also mentioned, Naomi, that the consumers and so on, they ask for it. So unfortunate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're sort of running out of time. We're near the end of the debate. So I'll come to all of you now for your sort of final comments and perhaps your final asks of the European Commission. So let's say over to you first.
Certainly. So I probably did mention it a couple of times already, but let's have a dialogue. Let's have a dialogue in Parliament. Let's have one with the Commission and the member states as well, with all the interested stakeholders, so we can have an open and free discussion about how to go about these things, because this current system is quite frankly not sufficient. It doesn't serve the consumers, it doesn't serve the businesses, and it doesn't really serve the purpose that it's supposed to do. So let's see if we can't get that changed sooner rather than later.
Indeed. Naomi?
Yeah, I'll like to join that as well. So let's have the dialogue indeed. And I think that's also what ILSA Europe is doing, trying to foster the dialogue between the three stakeholders, so the industry, the academia, and the public authorities. And with this concise monograph that we've developed, we're really focusing on education of the general public. But I think it is really important also to have clear regulations so that we can create clarity for producers, but also for consumers.
And Espen, over to you, Lars.
Yeah, I also would like to join what the two other members of the panel have said. So, but basically, let's be very clear. The probiotic name is out in the public domain. The genie is out of the bottle. I'm sorry that the EU Commission couldn't be part of it, but I really hope that we can engage, in an open and constructive dialogue with the EU Commission to secure that we have a reasonable solution in accordance with what's, the situation in the rest of the world, but also internally in EU, so that we secure a level playing field for all, we would say, partners in this field, and make sure that we can inform the consumers in a open and reliable way.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much to our panelists and also to Denai, who had to leave us a little bit earlier. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you to all of you who have been watching this debate on probiotics. I hope it's informed you a little bit better of the picture across Europe. Thanks for watching from Euractiv and us and IPA Europe. Thanks for watching and bye-bye.